We're both people in recovery from drug addiction.
Yep.
How long you got, Frank?
4 years, little over 4 years.
Yeah.
September made 4 years for me.
Yeah, I got 4 years too. I'm gonna jump into to my story of addiction.
You said you were, first of all, how old are you?
So I'm 29, I'll be 30 in May.
Okay.
Yeah. And
where were you born?
So I was born in Media. So Media is like 30 minutes outside of Philly. Delco, dirty Delco, should represent. No, but I grew up in Media, pretty ordinary family. I was an only child, which was kind of tough.
How old are your parents?
So my parents are like 60. My dad's gonna be 65 this year, and me and him always had, and I can kind of dive more into it, but me and my pops always had like a tough relationship, you know. So he was one of the people that I always kind of for my whole life wanted to get his love, you know what I mean? Whether that was sports or I ran for the president of my class, I was constantly trying to like figure out how I could get my dad to love me. And my dad grew up, his father was a boxer, right? So he grew up in a household where like, you didn't show love. Like it was a real tough place to live. And
and especially with him being older, you know, it's a whole different generation, you know, that you have to think about, where men were a lot colder, you know, at that time. Yeah,
I mean, it gives me perspective, right, about when I think about like parenting, you know, what's going to be important to me, and trying to be like overly talkative with emotions and emotional health, because that just wasn't something that I had as a kid.
Yeah. Okay. And going through school, how were your grades? Were you active in sports?
Oh yeah. Like, so I was I tried to be a perfectionist, right? So like when I was young, I thought that I would feel better if I could prove to everybody that I was like capable, if I was worthy of love, right? So like I went hard at football and wrestling and baseball, and wrestling was really my go-to sport though. My dad wrestled for Lafayette when they were like top 10 in the country. So I grew up wrestling, and wrestling in middle school, like I didn't lose a match for my 7th grade year, and then my 8th grade year I think I lost one time. I started wrestling up with the high school team.
Now, let me ask you something. How did it feel when you lost?
Oh, I hated to lose. You know what's crazy though, and I don't tell very many people this. I used to get so nervous before wrestling matches generally. I don't know what it was, but I would throw up because my stomach was in knots. I think it's the worrying about what other people think, right? It's like there's no timeouts, there's no teammates to blame.
It's just you.
It's just you.
And them.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask you that is because my son just started wrestling, and he lost his first match on Friday.
Oh, really?
And of course, I didn't want to see him lose, but I was happy. And I told him, he got embarrassed. He started crying. He said, I got embarrassed. And I said, that's good. I said, remember how that feels. And if you don't want to feel that again, then you work harder. When everybody else stops practicing, you keep on practicing, you know. So I think that's important. And also, we embrace our losses. You know what I'm saying? Like a loss is truly only a loss if we don't learn shit from it. As long as we learn something from it, it's not a loss. It's all right. You know.
But wrestling was also the place where I first got introduced to drugs. And I like to say that I think I'm somebody who would have found drugs, who would have found Percocet, even if I didn't have any type of injury. But I think it is important to notice when I was 16, I tore my rotator cuff in my right arm. I actually still got the scar right here. Yeah, full rotator cuff tear. And so what happened was I had this like rock star surgeon out in Delaware that did a bunch of professional athletes, all this and that. So, you know, I thought this would be the guy who would, you know, get me back wrestling as soon as possible. But he was also somebody who was prescribing a ton of pills. I remember he gave me 15s, like a whole big bottle of Perc 15s. And you know, my parents were really cautious with the pills. Like, so my mom gave them to me.
Did she hold them?
Yeah, she held them, and then she gave them to me. But I think what getting them through the surgery did for me was it taught me that, oh, these pills aren't that big a deal.
They're coming from a doctor.
Yeah, like, and later in life when you know, I had friends doing them and were offering them to me. I wasn't like the say no to drugs, oh, I'm scared of drugs. It was like, no, these are the same pills I took after my surgery. You know? And years later, what ended up happening is I I went back and dug through my mom's room, and she was still holding those same pills. So I found all of them, I put them into a big plastic bag, and I had a little fucking field day for a couple days, you know?
And that's something that I was gonna ask when you said that you were in sports and competed in high school at a high level. So a lot of people don't realize how common it is for teenagers, high school students, to be injured in sports, be prescribed a painkiller, a narcotic, and that's where they first experience drugs. You know, the majority of people aren't first experiencing on a drug corner. They're not going to Kensington and cop for the first time.
Bro, and when I'm telling you, like, at that time in my life, like, on the outside, I had a lot of positive things going on. I was the president of my class 3 years in a row. I was all advanced placement classes. I was a very good athlete. You know, I definitely had these inner feelings, which I like discovered when I got into recovery of having a void and my issues with my dad, right? But if you were somebody who just knew me by my Facebook profile at that time,
you would never.
No, you would never. And even when I started running with drugs, right? When I started, I got quick into it. I got into Oxy 80s. I remember when, you know, those were my jam. And you know, when I got into Oxy 80s, I was still more or less functioning for 3 years at this high level. And that's what I loved about painkillers, was they were like a miracle drug in the sense that I could do them and still live this life where I had all this other stuff going on. And nobody would know that I had this secret life behind the scenes where I was running around and you know, doing and selling these drugs.
Now, how many other kids like yourself were there in school like that? Kids that were taking pills, you know, secretly having their fun taking pills, but still putting up that facade like they were doing good. You want me to grab you a battery charge right now? Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, no, seriously, that's one of the crazy things about it, right? Is my football team, if you looked at my Pencrest High School football team, I swear to God, all the varsity players were popping perks. There's so many kids there. Like, I know for a fact, and I'm not gonna like name drop them on here, but like the guy who a year ahead of me or 2 years ahead of me was the quarterback, and another guy who was the head wide receiver. Like, these kids that when I was a freshman in school, we grew up like, you know, these are the bosses in our high school. They were running around doing pills. So it was this counterculture thing where it was like all the cool kids, all the kids that hung out with the hot chicks, they all did pills. So it was like, you know, for me, this guy who was in the advanced placement classes and would otherwise be like, would otherwise be like sort of like a nerd, right? You know, like, or you know, a goody two-shoes. When I started doing like 30s and 80s and I started selling like weed and selling pills and stuff like that, it really enhanced, I felt like, at least, maybe this wasn't the reality, but I thought it was, like, you know, it enhanced my popularity in my school. Then I all of a sudden started getting invited to the parties, hanging out with the hot girls. That's what drugs does in high school, or at least it did at my time in my high school, at like the height of the pill epidemic. You know what I mean?
Now, what was it that kept you using them?
So you know, here's where things get tricky, right?
We all get to that point where we realize, all right, this isn't so much fun no more. I don't really like this. What kept you using after that point? So
I remember, and I'll take you through the whole story. So I remember I had a girlfriend in high school I really liked, and she actually called me a pillhead, like right as we were breaking up. And I was going off to Penn State, like a huge college, and she was staying home cutting hair. And so my ego said, yo, this chick's just hating because I'm leaving her. Like, fuck her. But at a certain point, I also realized in my head, I'm like, these pills have gotten me pretty addicted. It's not quite as cool as I thought it would. Like, people are starting to say that, like, this is a drug addiction. I'm like, when I go to college, I'm just gonna booze. Like, I'm just gonna drink. I'm not gonna get into, like, the hard drugs. And I did that, right? I did that for, like, a year and a half up at Penn State, my freshman year. I didn't really fuck with heavy drugs. But what happened to me, and I think what happens to so many people with pills, is you can outrun the perks for, like, you know, 6 months, a year, 8 months. If you're lucky, right, you can get a little time away from the addiction. But ultimately, if you're drinking or if you're around people that are using them, you're gonna run into a spot where like you're like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just gonna do it just this one time.
Yep.
And then when it comes to me, when I do them that one time, the difference is my friends, they say, oh shit, that was a fun night. How funny. And I say, yo, does that guy got any more?
Yep.
Right? And then I end up going on a spree where for 3 months, 6 months, I'm doing perks every single day. So I mean, bro, to keep it real, I got to a point where I was doing 1030s a day regularly, and I was selling them because I wanted to be able to do them for free. You know,
what age was this?
So
was this while you were in college?
Yeah, so I started when I was 17. I started with the Oxys and the 30s, and then in Penn State really when I was like, you know, 19, 20, 21. My junior year was the first time I told my parents, which that was like a huge step for me, because again, I had this kind of like image that on the outside I had it all together, and my parents like believed that denial, like they were in denial more than I was, right? Yep. But what really brought me to tell them was just the fact that like I owed people mad money. So like I owed one kid in our house like $2 grand, and he was up my ass to pay him, and my dad was the only solution I had on how I was gonna get the money. So I went to my parents, I said, hey look, like I got this drug problem. Went home to my parents, right? And like telling your parents can be probably the scariest thing. If anybody's ever experienced this firsthand, like I did not want to tell my parents what was going on. I remember like crying the whole night before. But I had this idea. There was this doctor in my hometown. You're probably familiar with this Vivitrol, right? The shot.
Yes, sir.
And this was back in the day with the shot, right? So there wasn't this rule of like.
So what year was that?
I would guess I was 20 years old. I'm 29. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe like 2011.
2011.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll go get this shot, right? And I'll go into the office. I'll get the shot. And then I'll go back up to Penn State, and I'll just keep drinking, partying, doing my thing, but I won't be able to get high off 30s. And then I'll get my pops to pay back the money I owed. Yeah. So that was like my thinking of how I was going to get this whole thing taken care of. And I did that. I actually remember I got the shot off of using the day before every time. So I would go into horrible, horrible withdrawal. And I would get like a whole bag of Xannies.
Yeah.
And I would take the Xanax for like 48 hours until the withdrawal subsided. Yeah. And then I would put a smile on my face and go up to school like I wasn't living this like catastrophically crazy life, right? Like that I just had, I had a normal weekend at home. How was your weekend? Yeah. Meanwhile, I like slept through the sheets, and my poor mom is like changing my sheets at night. Like if I feel bad about one thing relating to addiction, it's the unfair burden I put on my mom and my dad, specifically my mom.
Yeah, and listen, I always say that our children and our family are truly the innocent people when we're in addiction. We put our children through hell, we put our family through hell, we rob them of their sleep, their peace of mind. Motherfucking mom is staying up all night worrying, am I gonna get a call, my baby? Your mom's in the other room knowing you're sick and suffering, and there's nothing she could do for you. You know, that's the thing with addiction is when somebody's in their addiction, there's nothing we could do. Yeah. It don't care how much money you got, don't care you white, black, Spanish, it's coming to get you.
And that's the crazy thing too with addiction is the best advice you can give somebody if their family member is struggling with addiction is often like, you gotta separate yourself from the situation.
Yep, those boundaries.
Those boundaries, and that's hard, right? It's like every mom wants to help their kid, every brother wants to help their brother. If you're dating somebody, you like think about the possibility of them being this great person that you met them and they were without the addiction. But the number one thing you gotta do is let it go, let go, and they gotta figure it out.
Especially if it's a woman, because you know women have that instinct to nurture and take care of and be motherly. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times women will find a man that's broken and be like, oh, I could fix him up a little bit. And not knowing that's a fight he got to rumble himself. Yeah. There's nothing we could do to help them. You know, we sort of got to let it play its course. We have to be supportive without enabling. You know, there's a lot of different things that we have to do. We have to wear a lot of different hats when we got a family member who's going through addiction. You know?
And so... just to kind of figure out what happened with the shot, right? So I got that shot, the Vivitrol shot, for those of you guys who are familiar, the shot.
Yeah, I was on that for 6 months when I first got clean.
Oh, yeah. And I think, look, I'm not against it. I think it's a great crutch when you're doing everything else right. Yeah. But getting over addiction takes the work mentally and spiritually. And I was trying to cure the outside solution. It was like plugging a tire, right? Like I wasn't actually getting like a new tire. Yeah, 100%. I was just trying to plug the tire.
It was just good for right now. Yeah. It's a temporary fix to a permanent problem.
While the pain's so strong, right? Like I think when you're in so much freaking pain, you can get through anything, right? Like you can just will yourself through it. But eventually the pain and the memory of that pain, despite how bad I felt about my mom, none of that shit prevented me from going out and picking up. And in that second time I started to do it, it got way worse. Like I got, you know, this was, you know, probably, it was on and off, but I'm kind of giving you the major chunks here. When I picked up again in my early 20s, and I never really got off for longer than like 6 or 9 months. It was just streaks. Like I would use until I got robbed, or I would use until I left a baggie out. Yeah, and then I would
next crisis.
Yeah, that next crisis. And then I would put some time together. I never did any type of formalized program. I would just will myself. And again, I would be, when I wasn't doing 30s, I was like smoking like an ounce a week, drinking 3 or 4 days a week. I was doing everything else to numb myself of the pain of being myself, which was my whole problem all along.
Yeah, and the key thing you said there is pain. People, we don't use painkillers because we're feeling good. We use painkillers to do exactly what they're intended to do, to kill pain.
To numb.
So we all have some type of trauma that we didn't deal with and some type of bad feelings that we didn't deal with, and we learn how to hide them with the drugs. So a lot of times we get clean and we think, okay, drugs is my problem, but we don't forget what drove us to drugs in the first place. Yeah. So we get clean and be like, my life is just gonna fall into place now because I'm clean, because I take drugs out of the equation. Negative. We still have those underlying issues that we have to address. You know, just like you said, Vivitrol will get you on base. It's not gonna get you home though.
No. And here's the crazy part about it, right? Is when you numb yourself out with painkillers, you're not only numbing the negative shit, you're not only numbing the pain, you're also numbing every happiness, every joy, every moment with your kids. Like you're numbing out all the positive parts of life too. Yep. And then what's crazy is when you finally decide I'm gonna put down these pills, the reason why you can't stay stopped is because then all of a sudden you get flooded with emotion again and your body's like, yo, what the fuck is this?
Absolutely.
You know, like 100%. I can't handle this. This is too much. I'm overwhelmed. I need something to just numb myself out.
The best way that I like to describe it is like Spider-Man when he first got bit by the bug and his spider senses went off. That's what happens when we get off drugs. We've had those feelings suppressed and those receptors are so fucked up that we start to feel, you know, every single emotion and every single sensation we can feel. And we don't feel them over a course of, you know, a month. We feel them like that. So literally we're happy, sad, depressed, excited, anxious, nervous, bitter, sweet, sour, all that we get like that. And that's what drives a lot of people to get high.
Yeah. I remember when I finally got sober, and I can take you through some of the bottom on how I got there, but when I finally ended up making that decision when I was 25 years old, I remember this time, right, running around this track. This is my neighborhood track. And I remember like being out there. I was so out of shape. I couldn't run more than like a quarter of the track. But I felt like with every step, I was just trying to run out of my skin. I really was. I felt like with every step I took on that track, all I was trying to run out of was my body, because I was like a walking child. Like I was the most insecure person imaginable. Like I can't even describe that feeling of getting out of rehab and being like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what happened. I haven't processed what happened. I'm scared of the world. I'm flooded with all these emotions. I don't know how to handle them. I literally needed somebody, and thank God there are people in my life, you know, through the 12-step program at the time, who held my hands.
Yeah.
But what I was willing to do, and the reason why I think, you know, I was able to stay stopped, was I was able to at least admit, I don't know shit right now.
Yeah.
Like my way of working things ended me up in the worst possible place.
Yep.
Rehab, 5 minutes away from my house, 5 minutes down the road from where I grew up, and I felt like I, you know, was off to all this success. I was going to the same rehab with the same kids I once considered burnouts, right? Are in the place with me. That's more or less a mental ward. Yep. And I remember that first day just laying in that bed looking up and being like, how the fuck did I get here, man?
Yep. It's funny you say that because I have people, you know, I started selling drugs first and then went through some stuff and ended up started using. But I remember I had a guy specifically I would pay to walk my dogs, to wash my Mercedes and do all that stuff. And I remember when it hit me, I was like, damn, we're getting high together. This is the same dude that I had a couple months ago washing my Mercedes and taking my dog for a walk and cleaning shit out of my backyard. And I was like, I'm no different than him. I just got money. That's all it is. That's the only difference. I got money and he doesn't. You know that, and there's no difference.
That's a perspective check, right?
Yeah, hell yeah. It was extremely humbling. And for me, that's one of my, you know, like I always remember that because I justified saying I wasn't a drug addict because I wasn't climbing in windows, I wasn't lying to anybody, I wasn't stealing, and I had money. So I justified by saying, I can't be like them, I got money, I dress nice, you know. But in reality, I was just like them, I just had on a little nicer clothes and a little bit more money in my pocket, which made it worse. Which made it worse.
Made it worse. Let me take you down the bottom, and I do want to say this part of my story because it's easy to suggest that this shit didn't happen to me, when in reality, I think in order to make any meaningful change in your life, you really got to hit some points of pain. And so for me, those points of pain, I remember one time I was down, I took the L down to 52nd Street, so I was supposed to keep going all the way to 69th Street because I was picking up 30s from a guy down there at the time, and I had like more money than I had had in a long time at that point. I had maybe like $2 grand or something like that, and I was like bulk picking up 30s, and this guy's phone turned fucking off. And you know, for like a guy who's going through drug withdrawal at that moment, like
that's the worst.
Yeah, I had all the money, I did whatever I needed to do to get that money, and I was like unbelievably deflated. And so I got off at 52nd Street and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna go look for these. And you know, being a white guy dressed in some preppy ass shit down 52nd Street, like talk about a Target with a pocket full of cash in my pocket. And sure enough, some boys lured me around the corner, and I walked behind this little house, and the next thing I know, I got hit right in the side of the face with a gun. And I was so determined. I cared more about the money than my life at that point. So I was so determined to keep the money that I threw, like, and landed 2 pretty solid punches on these guys. And thank God that, you know, they didn't kill me. But they, you know, I ended up getting knocked unconscious, and I woke up, and I woke up covered in blood, and all my money was gone. And sure enough, I went back to my pops. I made up this story about how I was in the wrong place at the wrong time and I got jumped. And it had nothing to do with any sort of drugs. Blah, blah. And meanwhile, they took my wallet. So they took everything I had. I was on my way to the bank with my paycheck, this and that, you know, and ended up picking up again from that other guy, you know, later that same day, right after I got out of the hospital, man. So pathetic, right? Like just so.
That's we all have stories like that. Anybody that's gonna be honest in their addiction, that shit ain't roses. You know, it's not peaches and cream. We all got those type of stories that we're lucky, you know, to walk away from them in one piece, and it just shows how sick, you know, how sick that our thinking is at that time, where we care about nothing else but getting what we want and what we think or what our body needs at the time, you know.
And then let me just give you the last of the ugly details. So I do remember I was it was right before my 25th birthday. At that time I had actually been prescribed Xanax and Adderall. I knew this like dirty doctor. And I was trying to get him to give me opiates too, but at that point he'd only given me script for like a totally unreasonable amount of Xanax and Adderall, like more than anybody, like 4 bars a day and like 90 minutes. Like this guy was a drug dealer disguised as a doctor, right? And those people are 100% out there. But I took these scripts, I went to Las Vegas, I was on a bachelor party, and we picked up bags of dope from this chick that like was probably 10 or 15 minutes outside of Las Vegas. And so I went out, I hung out with my friends, we got all fucked up, blah, blah, and then their flight went to leave, and what I did that was different, I just canceled my flight, bro. I was like, I'm not going home, I can't go home. And instead, I went to that neighborhood where we picked up, kind of like a project type area, and I just walked around. And finally, I ran into this chick who sold the drugs, and I ended up staying there for 4 days. I turned my phone off. My family didn't know like where the fuck I was. I turned my phone off. I slept there. I like picked up bags and just like spent all the money I had on my pocket, and basically just like lived on the floor until I literally like, I forget what happened. My mom like somehow got a hold of me or something, and I got a flight home. And I had actually been working for a judge that summer, like bringing in drugs into the courthouse, bro, because I was so hooked, like I couldn't not have Xanax or Adderall. So yeah, I would put the scripts in my bag and bring it into the judge's chambers. And as I would be working on legal papers, I would be like popping them throughout the day just to kind of get by on the day. And so I actually had work for that judge that day I got back, and I took a red-eye flight. So I was up pretty much all night, and I ended up taking a train directly to the courthouse, and we were in some legal writing seminar, and I'll never forget it. I'm in this legal writing seminar, and this lady's talking about God knows what about legal writing. I'm not paying any attention. But all of a sudden, I got my first panic attack of my entire life, bro. It felt like a heart attack, except I thought I was going to wake up and there would be paramedics everywhere and stuff. And then I snapped out of it, and the seminar was still going on. But I was in this total state of shock where I'm like, and I ended up walking out, somehow walking out without causing too much of a scene. And I went outside and I called my therapist, who at the time was like the one person in my life I felt like I could trust, like who had been with me ride or die for the last 3 or 4 years. And all she said was one question: "Are you ready?"